Bret Baier, how are you, my friend?
Hey, Mark. Yeah, there was a slight bit of frustration. I had so much stuff to get to, and I was hoping that it was really going to be this civil back and forth. But, it was good for her to come on, and I think she should do more of them. But I was just trying to get through the talking points, and it took a while, and it was a little bit of, interrupting and kind of getting in on the breath.
It was clear they had a strategy to come in there, which was, if you asked a question, to divert to something else, to spend most time trashing Trump, giving little speeches, filibustering, and so forth. They knew you only had a limited amount of time, and they were hoping that that's how they would play it. But you know what? You didn't tolerate it. You weren't angry. You weren't rude. You were trying to get back in, and you did. And I have to tell you, I watched some of the comments by some of the people on Fox and so forth, and some of them were dead wrong. I'm telling you. I'm not taking this as a partisan. I was watching this to try and analyze it and talk to my audience. We have millions of people listening right now from coast to coast. And I bet you they agree with me, not just because they're conservatives and so forth. She did not come off well. Here's an example, Brent. What did you learn from her after 25 minutes? You asked her about the border. You asked her about Iran. You got the usual pablum, and I'm not finished, and I'm not finished. I mean, that's what I got out of her, that she was quite rude and that she had a strategy in place and she was going to do it no matter what. I don't view that as a successful interview from her perspective.
Which is why, Mark, I said at the end of the show, you go back and look at this transcript. There is some news in there. There is some news where she says she's going to follow the law. She's not saying what position she took in 2019 and where she is now. She's going to follow the law. She said that, Donald Trump did the same thing about transgender surgery and prison inmates and illegal aliens, which is not true. The Trump prison system had this policy. He never advocated for it, and a transition or transgender surgery never happened in his presidency. And she said, you have to own what happens in your presidency. Well, that was after talking about the border and trying to get her to own the change to remain in Mexico policy on the early days of the administration.
But you know what, Bret Baier, the thing is this. She was never going to allow this just to be a regular interview where you ask questions and she answers the questions directly. She had an agenda. She had no intention. You asked her how many illegal aliens came in. You should have that off the top of your head. People talk about it all the time. As you pointed out, her own administration has put numbers out. She doesn't know. She talks about Iran. You asked her about their actions toward Iran, and then she talks about how they're supporting Israel. But you didn't ask her that. You asked her about Iran. And this went on and on and on. And I have to believe that people who aren't sure what they want to do are saying, wait a minute. She didn't say anything. She didn't answer anything. And she's busy spending probably 40% of the time attacking Donald Trump.
Which, by the way, Mark, I was really surprised when, after having two bites at the apple about what's going to be different in a Harris administration from a Biden administration, from The View, from Stephen Colbert, and then from me, she did not have any specifics. And she kept on saying, we need to turn the page. And I said, turn the page from what? You've been vice president for 3.5 years. And she said, from Donald Trump. You know what I'm talking about. And I finally said, Madam Vice President, I don't know what you're talking about. You've been in office for 3.5 years.
That was a great point. No, we don't know what you're talking about. I want to say this to you also. You're going to get a lot of incoming from the usual.
100%.
And 100%. But I want you to know, seriously, and not just because I'm your friend, but this was a very, very important interview. Not because she revealed so much information, but she revealed herself even more. And I think this is why they try and keep her undercover. Unless she's attacking Trump, unless she can go off topic, unless she can minimize the amount of time that she's actually questioned, limit the number of questions, unless she can get her rehearsed lines out, she doesn't really know what to say. I mean, honestly, Brett, if I were there and you were asking me questions, I could boom, 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 boom. She doesn't do that.
I think that they prepared for this like a debate, and they wanted a moment. And, they wanted a viral moment. They wanted a moment that could play on MSNBC, which will play, when she's going after Donald Trump and getting angry. I think that was the moment she practiced for. She was off the trail yesterday, and I think they probably had some time. They originally said 25 to 30 minutes. We got there. They said 20 minutes. And then we said we had to start. They gave us this time that we had to do the taping at 5 o'clock, which is the weird thing. I mean, I was going to do it live, but I decided we were going to do it as live, tape, and then just turn around the tape. But we said in order to do that, you have to be starting by 5:15 just for our machines to be able to turn it around by the top of the 6 p.m. They were supposed to start at 5. She walked in at 5:16. And, all my people and the producers are sweating and, can we technically turn it around? So that was all part of icing the kicker and kind of delaying. That's a little behind the scenes.
We're here with Bret Baier, who just finished interviewing Kamala Harris. Let's step back a second, Bret. Is this not the weirdest election in your lifetime? I mean, here you're talking to somebody who never received the vote for the presidential nomination. She's hiding out for 2 months. Now, all of a sudden, she wants to get out there. She goes to Howard Stern and all of her, she thinks, her favorite haunts. Then they decide to do one interview on Fox with Bret Baier, and they're playing these games, 5:16 and, 20 minutes, not 25, 30 minutes. You probably were getting a sense right away, boy, this is pretty hostile. I mean, and she had an opportunity to sit there for 30 minutes and answer your questions. But she didn't do it.
It was two ways it could have gone, Mark. I was really hoping it was going to go the way that I envisioned, which was more kind of like a conversation about topics. We could say, you have differences. This is where I am. I would press, but in a respectful way. And I've done many of those interviews where it's really fruitful to have a back and forth, and you get someplace and you actually learn something about policy and where they are. Then I thought, it could be the other way. It could be that this is meant for a viral moment. And essentially, it's a practice for a debate. And, so I need to be able to, get my questions as much as I can in a respectful but tough way. And hope that, she comes back when she's in a different talkative mood and we learn more. I think, I'm offering both sides all of this, and the network's been awesome. They took all the commercial breaks out of the first half of the show, and that's in an effort so people can learn stuff. And I just feel like we didn't learn a ton from this back and forth.
But she didn't want you to learn anything. That's the reason. That's why she was hiding out for 2 months. That's why she only goes pretty much to people she knows who've openly endorsed her. You're a journalist. You're one of the few journalists left. You and Martha and a few others and so forth. And you're there. And I've seen you interview Democrats, tough on them, but respectful. Republicans, tough on them and respectful. She was not going to allow you to do the kind of an interview a journalist would do. She wanted to control it. She wanted to filibuster. She wanted to attack Donald Trump. I don't think she really got out of this what she wanted to get out of it because you wouldn't allow it. But on the other hand, I don't think she persuaded a single voter that she's the one to support. I really don't. I mean, based on what? I didn't see anything. Now, her base may get excited, which includes some of the media, MSNBC and so forth. But that's about it. What do you think?
I think so. I think the left will be fired up that she was a tough commander-in-chief and she, stuck it to Fox News. And I think that that's what they'll say. But I do think that there were some vulnerabilities in there. The answers on immigration were really thin. They were only a couple inches deep. And trying to get to the decisions, I mean, you could have said, Mark, looking back, I think we should have. I think we should have left Remain in Mexico. Imagine that moment. Or how about turn the page? You know what? There are some things I would do differently. I probably would have done Afghanistan differently. Even though I was the last person in the room, there are some differences. But she does not want to say that. And then she says that, she never saw any problems with Joe Biden, mentally.
That was a big part. That was a big point. You're right. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because my follow-up, you couldn't really hear it because she was talking, but George Clooney spent 10 minutes with him at a Hollywood fundraiser and determined this was not the same Joe Biden. It was the Joe Biden we saw on the debate stage. I said, you've spent at least once, if not more, times with him a week for 3.5 years. You didn't notice anything?
Because she didn't want to answer the question. She doesn't have a good answer. What is she going to say? Seriously, on the border. By the way, you hit her there. You said, look, 6 Senate Democrats voted for this bill. She's gotten away with this for 2.5 months. Oh, the Republicans killed it because Trump told them to kill it. Excuse me. 6 Democrats voted against this bill. You're really the first news person to mention that. And I'm sure you wanted to mention more, but you couldn't. So you're sitting there, and in the moment, while this is going on, are you kind of having an out-of-body experience like, geez, I really don't want it to go this way. But on the other hand, I mean, I got to stay in here, despite the fact that she's hitting a little bit below the belt.
You know, I had echoes of my interview with President Obama right before Obamacare, the vote in the House. It was 2010. I was in the White House, and they said, you get 30 minutes. I get there, they get 20 minutes. I mean, it's the same folks, I think, maybe advising. And, there's a staff guy with a cell phone that's ticking back from 20 minutes. And I asked the first question, President Obama, and it goes 3 minutes. And then I asked the second question, it goes 3.5 minutes. And the clock is ticking backwards. And finally, you do have an out-of-body experience, and you say, either I have to jump in and appear rude, or else we're going to get rolled here. And I think that's the same feeling I had. I wish I didn't talk over her. I wish we could have just stopped, but she wanted to keep going. But I'm happy she came on, Mark. And listen, I think that's a breakthrough, and hopefully she'll come back, or some people will come back, and we'll continue to have a discussion.
Well, if you didn't at least try to interrupt to get her to refocus on issues that were raised, like she said nothing about the economy when you asked her about the economy. She said nothing about Iran. It was all about protecting Israel, which they haven't done, in my humble opinion. But she kept moving it that way. I will say this. If you hadn't at least tried to get back in and explain different points and so forth in terms of your question, you would have had 3 questions and out. In other words, It would have been over. And I think you would have felt horrendous about it. And you would have said, oh, my God, I should have been a little bit more forceful. I should have gotten in there more. I should have questioned more. You really had no choice. They left you no choice.
When I left, Mark, I felt horrible. I had this feeling like, oh, my gosh, what did I leave on the table? But actually, when I watched it, I think there was some fruitful things that came out of that. And you're going to look back, and there's some newsy moments.
Well, we're very proud of you here. I thought you really tried to do your best, and you did a very, very good job under those circumstances. And they were trying to really, I think, sabotage the interview and use it as an opportunity to advance her general statements and so forth that we've all heard, and use the rest of the time to trash Trump. But you didn't let her do it. You were pushing back on questions. But you know what? Here's the deal. You're a journalist. The American people can see this now, and they make up their own minds if they were impressed with her or not. You're not running for office. She is. She needs their votes. You don't need anybody's votes. Anyway, God bless you, my friend, and congratulations from my perspective.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
All right. Take care of yourself.